Hear now the word of the Lord as it is found in the Old Testament, the New Testament, and the word given to the new church. Let not your heart be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again to receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also. Do not lay up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moth and rust destroy, and where thieves break through and steal. But lay up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where neither moth nor rust destroy, and where thieves do not break through nor steal. For where your treasure is, there will your heart be also. Behold, I am coming quickly, and my reward is with me to give to everyone according as his work has been. I am the Alpha and Omega, the beginning and the end, the first and the last. Blessed are those who do his commandments, that they may have right to the tree of life and enter in through the gates of the city. After death, the body of a person is in the spiritual world, and they appear there in a human form altogether as they had appeared in the natural world. They enjoy the faculty of sight, of hearing, of speaking, of thought, of will, of all actions as they had in the world. For being a human being is not to be one of the world, but to be one of the Spirit in the world. Therefore, they have all faculties they possessed while in the world, but they are not encumbered with the natural body. This they leave behind, never to resume, and they continue then into the other world in a new life. This is what is meant by the resurrection. In order that a person may live to eternity, it's necessary that their mortal or material body should be taken away by means of death. When this is done, that which is immortal is uncovered, and the person becomes a spirit or an inhabitant of the world of spirits, the spiritual world and heaven. It is a wonderful thing that the Word is in the heavens, and it is written in a language that can be seen as simple for those who are simple, but wise for those who are wise. In every society, there is a copy of the Word written that is kept by the angels in the sanctuary of that society. It is kept in the sanctuary lest anything there should be altered in some point. In respect to the fact that the simple understand it in simplicity and the wise in wisdom, our word is indeed like that in the heavens. Things are affected in a different way there. All who are prepared for heaven take place in the world of spirits. After a time in the world of spirits, they desire to enter heaven. And after a certain longing, their eyes are opened, and they see a way which leads to some heavenly society. They enter on this way, and they ascend. And as they ascend, there is a gate and a keeper there. The keeper opens the gate, and they go in. And it is discovered then whether the light that is within them is the same or corresponds to the light that is in that community, especially if the heat that they carry with their loves corresponds and is the same as the heat in that society. If so, they stay. If not, they find another society in which to dwell. Jesus said, I am the way. All who enter through the door to the sheepfold come by me. To enter through the door means to enter through the Lord, for the Lord is the door of the sheepfold. Therefore he said, Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If anyone hear my voice and open the door, I will come in to him, and I will sup with him, and he with me. To stand at the door is to stand at the mind of a person, because by means of heaven, good things are introduced at the doorway of the mind. To think well about the Lord and about the neighbor, this opens the way to heaven. To think well about the Lord opens the way to his kingdom. There was seen a dragon who falsified all things of the word. And those were seen to be the tail of the dragon, who placed all of their salvation in simply having the Word and reading it, but not by applying the Word and doing it. It was told to them that just having a book on a table doesn't save you, but that reading from the Word, and still more, perceiving and desiring to do what is from the Word, this is saving. They were told that all conjunction with people on earth takes place by means of the Word, by living it, by loving it, and by doing those things which it commands. This is none other than the gate of heaven. Meditating on life can be fascinating. Many interesting questions arise. What is the purpose of our life? Is there another world after this life ceases here? Is there a God? What are the qualities of God? What should our relationship be with God? What about our relationship with other people? There are many religions and systems of belief in the world. This is ample evidence that people have come to many different answers to these questions. The many different answers result in different cultures, diverse concepts of creation, and in diverse approaches to life. You may know living alone can be unrewarding and uncomfortable. We know from our own experience and from observing the experience of others. We can also know from the experience the pleasure we receive in developing good relationships with other people. Developing and sustaining relationships should be one of our major efforts in this life. These relationships are with our God and with other people. That is a quote from an article Don Barber wrote, appears in New Church Life in 1985, titled Relationships, Communication, Separation, and Reconciliation. Don was a man, by the book kind of man. That was his strength, but it could also be seen as a weakness. And Don recognized this about himself, noting his own tendency to be more of a book guy than a people kind of guy. People in heaven are people of the book. The Word became flesh and dwelt among us. Every society in heaven has a book, the Word, that resides in their sanctuary. It says, lest being elsewhere, it should be altered in some point. It gives rise to a lot of thoughts what that means. So the angels just had their own copy that maybe they change it around or something? It's kept in the sanctuary. It says, lest it should be altered. In heaven there are roads, pathways, walks, interspersed with gates and doorways. Some communities have elaborate labyrinths that you need to go through in order to get to their society. The holy city, we know, has 4 square walls and 12 gates. Especially there are found gates along the roadways in and out of heavenly societies. Even hellish societies need gentle angelic giants to maintain order. With Don's eyesight now being restored to the acute vision which corresponded to his mind, we can imagine Don taking up some kind of such gatekeeping role in heaven. He who is the shepherd of the sheep, to him the gatekeeper opens, and the sheep hear his voice. The sheep follow him because they know his voice. A stranger they do not follow because they do not know the voice of a stranger. Other sheep which I have are not of this fold. I will bring them also, and they will hear my voice. But you, he said to certain people, are not of my sheep. You do not hear my voice. I know them. The ones who hear my voice, they follow me. All of us, on some level, are called to be watchmen on the walls, to observe and to see that evil and falsity don't take hold in our minds, don't take hold in the life of the communities that we love. And the role of a militant priesthood and a militant church are described in the teachings of the new church. Here's a quote. People can be governed by the good that they know. From the word that is inside of them, it is present, and there is a war because of the word there, a war with the evil and falsity that also reside there. So the spiritual person is at war with the natural person. And thus the angels who are with the interiors of our spirit bring about those things which defend against the things that come up from nature and which evil spirits inspire. This is also why the word mentions the church being a church militant. It's tough on gatekeepers when the doors seem unattended. Don read and wrote a lot about keeping things in order so that heavenly life could flow into himself, flow into his marriage, flow in with his family, flow in with his church and educational institutions, flow in with heavenly society into the Canadian society. It's tough on gatekeepers. Don would look around, see something he didn't like, and he would just write something to somebody about it. One time back in 1971, he was responding to the invitation he read that teachers who want a job should send an application into the academy of the new church, the church school of our church. They could have their files, be kept there. And Don wrote, "There's not even any assurance that such a teacher has an adequate knowledge of new church education, philosophy, in order to provide a good new church education, which general church, our denomination, general church parents wish their children to have. I would like to ask you, New Church Life, the magazine he's writing to obtain and publish a statement from the executive vice president," the EVP, and some of you might know who that was at the time, "so that we can be assured as parents to know whether any new teacher at the academy staff has been required to have college courses. If the academy teachers do not have such training, then academy education becomes, it seems to me, a good secular education in English, biology, mathematics. This sort of education I can provide my own children here at far less cost," Don said. "But the academy education must be something much more," he said. The EVP wrote back, Don was concerned perhaps he jumped a little bit to an assumption that might not have been well-founded. We all do that. The EVP wrote back and quoted him all the professors and all the books that the professors use, and ended by saying, I'd be happy to send him, he's writing to the whole New Church Life readership, but he's saying, I'd be happy to send him the Handbook of Customs, Procedures, and Rules, which describes who teaches what. And he quotes the different books by Willard Pendleton and different people. I'm not going to go through all of that. Don was a gatekeeper. He wanted to be sure that things that were passing into his church, into his family, into the community were good and orderly. He wanted only the best teachers at the academy. If he's going to send his kids all the way down there, he could do much better by himself here, closer to home. But he wanted to give his children, he wanted to give himself, he wanted to give this church the best that he could give. The priesthood is a military service, we're told in the book Apocalypse Explained, but against falsities and evils. And for the same reason, the church at this day is called the church militant. Shifting from books to vegetables. Don loves vegetables. He loved the gardens. He loved that which produced the vegetables. He was a do-it-yourself guy, I heard. I knew a little bit about that, and you can look at the pictures of Don and his family and the church community downstairs and see, if you didn't already know Don, how much he loved to do stuff, be involved with things. There are many pictures of the building of this church. That there's actually a little photo album in the church office, and you look at it and you go, "Who's that tall guy?" "Oh, that's Don." "Oh, who's that?" "That's Don." Wandering all around. Maybe he was having somebody take the picture of him just so. No, he just was there. He took telephone poles and built a swing set in the backyard. Maybe for Jeremy. Maybe mostly for Jeremy. Oh, yeah. Who takes telephone poles to build a swing set? That's Don, but he was tall enough perhaps to reach the top of them anyway. Created an ice ring in the backyard. put up the siding on the house. He just did all sorts of things that a lot of men do, a lot of women do as well. I don't know any women who use telephone poles to make swing sets. Poured concrete breezeway for cold storage for the vegetables and for other things. He was as much on an intellectual level, which he struggled with to have things be right, as he was on a natural level. He loved nature and hiking, camping, outdoor life, indoor sports like philately. Is that how you pronounce it, John? The love of collecting stamps. I know you would know that. He loved computers. He loved programming. He loved, now I should be able to pronounce this one easily because everybody knows Sudoku, right? But I don't. Sudoku, books and more books. Books and more books. And he had a great memory for numbers, for geography, for stamps. Even as his eyesight failed, he had memorized all the streets in all of Parkdale. And so, as a terrible driver, it was glad when people were glad when he stopped driving. But he could tell, with his eyes closed, what you're coming up to and what the street intersection was. He impressed impressionable young ladies like his daughters, and perhaps his son with such skill. Don liked to keep track of things. He wanted to champion the important matters of the spirit, of society, of government, of the church. He wrote, individually, we have much to learn about being an instrument of the Lord in helping others to live a life that leads to heaven. Part of what we need to learn is to distinguish between loves which we receive from the Lord and selfish loves. When we can make such distinctions, we are better able to be a good neighbor to others. Let us not be confused by natural science. He wished to champion his marriage. I've always understood the teachings of the threefold word as the divine truth given to humanity to help lead us to heaven and to states of heavenly life on earth. Teachings that are given about marriage, primarily from conjugal love, to help us, when unmarried, to prepare for marriage, and when married, to strengthen our marriage. The essence of heaven is marriage, the marriage of what is good and true in the individual, the marriage of individuals that they may be one angel. That's Don's writing. Don kept track of numbers and ideas and concepts. A man, Wilson Van Dusen, wrote many things about Swedenborg and the ideas of Swedenborg and the world. Wrote about Swedenborg as a mystic. Don wrote back. He counted various things. He said, there are 8 explicit references, 2 implicit references, and 4 references in Christian theology that supply no support, in my opinion, to the thesis that the author has put forward. Now, perhaps he said, I have a blind spot. He didn't mean physically. But I'd be interested in seeing what other people say about his critique of Wilson Van Dusen's work. Wilson Van Dusen wrote back and explained what he had thought, and I don't know if it convinced Don or not. But you see Don's mind at work in some of the things he wrote that were published in New Church Life. Don Barber was born on March 21st, just around the corner now, so this spring he would be 90 years old. His mother, Grace Scott Barber, was from Kitchener. His father, James Percy Barber, was from England. Had 3 sisters, Lorna, Catherine, and Evelyn. And the family lived at 114 Cowley Avenue in Parkdale, the area Don knew like the back of his hand, because when he was a young boy, he delivered groceries there. He knew it till the day he died, as mentioned before, could tell you whatever street you were on, even if you couldn't read the signs. He knew where he was. In those days, the Olivet Church was on Elm Grove Avenue, and so was the Olivet School, the same address as the building where Don died. The fact was not lost on him, as he remembered to me at the time of his sister's passing, noting that she was probably the first person to enter into spiritual life, because her baptism took place there, as well as to enter into eternal life at the same building. Don attended the University of Toronto. He studied mathematics. And as you can imagine, he was on the basketball team, being really tall. Leaving university, he became an actuary, an underwriter for North American Life Assurance company in 1953. He stayed there his entire career, working his way up through the company. He loved to attend church functions. He went to church assemblies, and on one such occasion in Bernathen, Pennsylvania, he met this beautiful young lady, Anne Sinisvet, with her two beautiful young daughters, Gabrielle and Marguerite. They were married on June 15th, 1963 in Bernathen, and they immigrated as a family to Canada in 1963. They lived on Warwood Road to be near to the Olivet Church, which was now here, not back down in Parkdale. And the dynamic duo became a dynamic trio, completed when Jeremy came along in 1966. And Sister Claire Hazen lived in Kitchener, and some cousins were from Kitchener, Michael, Kirk, Derek, and Janet Hazen. Kay Barber and Fred Longstaff lived in Etobicoke, and so cousins were around, David, Phil, playing the organ, thank you, Phil, Janice, and Elizabeth. And then cousins from Bernathen, Anne's sister, Joy, Ron, Lori, Roxanne, Gerda, and Brent. The family enjoyed trips to Bernathen, to the cottage Jodelheim at Lake Wallenpaupack. They loved the camp, which they did at Creemore. In later years, Don and Ann were regular visitors of Evelyn and her cottage in Muskoka, as well as going to see Fred and Lorna Woodall at their place in Lake Joseph. They loved to travel, see Gabrielle and Paul in Indonesia, later on in England, visit with James and Jessica. And they made connections with people in Norway and France and even Australia. Some of their trips included visits down to Elder Garden in Florida, which was probably just an excuse to see Jeremy and his kids, family down there. They moved from Warwood Road to a condo on Mill Road where Don was very active on the board. Then from there, when things started slowing down, they moved to Grenadier, is that right? Retirement residency. They lived there for a few years, and then finally, when Anne's care needs became more, they moved to the Elm Grove Avenue place. Just mentioned the old Olivet Church and School. So they've been active in the church, Don and Anne, until mobility issues really caused them to be able to have to pull back in their activities. But even so, in their retirement home, every Sunday they'd get together in front of a screen and either watch the live streaming of Bernathen and or the live streaming that we're doing right here at the Olivet Church. I want to close with some words that Don gave concerning ministerial training. Kind of poked me when I was reading through New Church Life for some of the things that Don wrote. And there was, a long time ago, a thing called the Denny Report on Market Research. And Don read it, analyzed it, and responded. And I thought, this is Don. This is Don. Regarding the highlights of the Denny Report on Market Research for Evangelization, it seems to me that the church members are generally warm and caring towards those members who regularly participate in church activities. Members enjoy each other's company regularly. They frequently enjoy opportunities to develop friendships with those in the church with whom they share interests. But how do we show our interest in caring for church members who cease to attend the activities for whatever reason, or who attend infrequently? Does our emphasis on leaving people in freedom develop into neglect? Has the church emphasis on intellectual instruction resulted in a church membership that has difficulty reaching out to inactive members, especially to see if there might be some current need we could serve? This was written in 1984, but it's just as apropos today for pastors and for congregants to remember the people that can't be here due to mobility issues, like Don and Ann for years, the last several years, just couldn't be here all the time. This is insightful. Don continues by saying, several years ago, I applied for a job transfer in the company where I worked. Among the battery of tests they gave me, which I completed, was one that indicated that I had poor interpersonal communication skills. Think about it. Don? He recognized that by doing some tests. And that I usually wanted someone to make contact with me rather than me initiating contact with someone else. Are the potential intellectual and interpersonal skills of student ministers similarly tested? I thought it was wonderful for Don to self-disclosed in 1984, you know what? I've got problems reaching out to people. I'm working on it. And he worked on it. I know he would not hesitate to call me up to ask me a question. That's how I felt anyway. So if he was hesitant to go out to reach out to people, he overcame that a lot by working on himself. Don felt deeply about Anne, his children, his grandchildren, his church, his community, his country. We will miss him. His gentle, human, but firm and strong approach to life. His dedication to useful service. As a gatekeeper, to see that things in the church had an orderly progression, as to take a strong stance about things he did not like. Could rub us the wrong way once in a while, but we're glad we have people that care enough to show what they believe and to stand by their strengths, stand by their beliefs. And that, if nothing else, was Don. For a day in thy courts is better than 1,000. I'd rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than to dwell in the tents of wickedness. Well done, thou good and faithful servant. Peace. Amen.